Welcome to Road to Recovery.
Hello and welcome to Road to Recovery, advocacy and insights for trucking accidents with Sagi Shaked. Sagi is founder of Shaked Law Personal Injury Lawyers and is ranked as one of the top 100 trial lawyers in the United States by the American Trial Lawyers Association. With a wealth of experience in personal injury, wrongful death, and complex litigation cases, he passionately advocates for victims and has recovered multi-million-dollar settlements in damages for his clients. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today's episode is about pre-trip inspections, what truck drivers must do, and how violations can impact personal injury litigation. Sagi, welcome back.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right, so can you kind of just talk about what the pre-trip inspection requirements are under FMCSR 396.13?
Yes.
Did I get that right?
Yeah, so let me tell you. So what is a pre-trip inspection? So first we got to we're talking about trucking accidents, right? And when we deal with trucks, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration regulates the rules that trucking companies and truck drivers must follow when they get on the road in the United States. And so if everyone follows the rules, hopefully they will, but they don't all. If they follow the rules, we'd have safer roads. That's the purpose of these rules. And there's so many different rules that apply, but we're going to talk about specifically these pre-trip inspections and why they're important. So first, let me lay out what the law says so we all understand what the law is, and then we'll go through the different things. So the Code of Federal Regulations 396.13, which specifically talks about, this is what it says, driver's inspection is the title, but it says this: before driving a motor vehicle, the driver shall. So this is something they have to do. It's not an option like a may. The driver shall, and there's three things. One is be satisfied that the motor vehicle is in safe operating condition. That's number one, or A. B is review the last driver inspection report if required by 396.11, and we're going to talk about 396.11 shortly. And then C, sign the report to acknowledge that the driver has reviewed it and that there is a certification that the required repairs have been performed. So if repairs are needed to be performed, they need to sign that that's been done, and so does the company. Now, the signature requirement does not apply to listed defects on a towed unit, which no longer is part of the vehicle combination. So again, something to consider. This isn't a voluntary thing that they're being nice and doing. They have to do this. And this is important. When they get on the road, about every 150 miles, they need to start going through this pre-trip inspection. Otherwise, what happens is you have, these dangerous vehicles, commercial vehicles, these 18-wheelers on the road causing havoc if they don't do these pre-trip inspections. And I give you an example of one where one of our clients was driving. Actually, we have even a better one. A guy is on the side of the road. He's buying from one of these food trucks. He's buying some food, and an 18-wheeler loses one of its tires, and it flies and smashes into him. Fractures his pelvis. He spends weeks in the hospital. You can just imagine, had they done the pre-trip inspection and checked those tires, this doesn't happen. But clearly, there was a mishap. There was nothing he did wrong other than maybe go to the food truck that day, which how would he have known that, a tire is going to fly off an 18-wheeler and smash into him? So that's the importance of the pre-trip inspection. And that's a small little example of what could happen if the pre-trip is not done, not checking, not done. These are things that happen.
Can you talk a little bit about the specific tests or the checks that they're supposed to do from exterior to interior to even the engine compartment?
Yeah, so let's start off with the exterior checks. And so this is what the law requires: your lights and reflectors. So you have to ensure your headlights, your brake lights, your turn signals are all working, because you can imagine, again, the turn signals are not working or your headlights are not working and you're going to be driving in the dark. What happens? No one's going to be able to see you. Someone can, run into you from behind. Someone can run into you, but from any direction. So this is critical. Also, what's important is that you check your devices. And what do I mean? Remember, we had that podcast, for those who listen to it, the podcast, the Betty Boda case against the Florida Power and Light truck, where they had to have the reflectors out. the triangles with the reflectors or the flares, you got to make sure that you have your warning devices with you. These are important. So going back to the external, you got to check the tires. You want to check for the proper inflation, the tread depth, because what if, and the minimum is 4/32 for steering tires and 2/32 for all the other types of tires. And you want to make sure there's no visible damage to them. Because if the tire tread is not the right tread, or the depth of it is not right, what happens? A tire can blow up on the road, and who knows what could happen to the truck, and people driving next to the truck can get hurt. So these are all reasons for this pre-trip inspection. So continuing on with the external checks, you have the brakes. You want to inspect the air brake systems, including the hoses, the drums, and the linings, the suspension. Yeah. All these things are like basic.
Brakes are brakes.
It's common sense. Like, they should do it. I can tell you in most cases, it's never done. And hence you have, 4,000 people dying a year from trucking accidents. The suspension, look for broken or missing leaf springs, shocks, or hangers. Again, we're not asking you to, or they're not asking you to go and do a whole, transmission check, but basic things that a truck driver should know. Coupling devices, verify that the fifth wheel is secure, like we just talked about, right? And locking mechanisms are functional. So that's from the exterior perspective. Again, and some of the more important things, again, the tires, the brakes, the reflectors, that they're still in good shape, that your lights are working. Now, when we talk about, you asked about the interior portion, you want to talk about the steering mechanism, ensure that there's proper alignment and no excessive play. So want to make sure that works properly. Make sure that the mirrors you can see, ensure there's clear visibility, and the mirrors are properly adjusted. So they're not adjusting in the middle of a drive. We all do that when we're in cars, but in trucks, it's a little different. You're driving around 80,000 pounds of machinery, and really a second can make a difference. And then again, interiorly, you want to go and make sure your emergency equipment, you have your fire extinguisher, the spare fuses, your reflective triangles, we talked about them. Now, from the engine compartment, you want to check on your oil, your coolant, your steering fluid, your windshield wiper levels, belts and hoses, inspect for cracks, wear, and leaks. And then if you have cargo, verify that your cargo is properly secured and the weight limits are within the regulations. Because what happens is we've had cases where the cargo wasn't properly secured, and these cars, they roll over to the side because the cargo is not placed right, or there's weight, they're not within the weight limitations. And finally, what you want to do is the functional tests. You want to conduct a brake system test, which includes the air brake governor, cut in and cut out pressures, braking pressure, and the service brakes. You want to test the horn and the windshield wipers. So those are some of the things that you want to do when we're talking about that pre-trip inspection.
From a legal perspective, how do pre-trip investigations, kind of show up in litigation? How are they used for plaintiffs? How are they used for the attorneys? Can you kind of go over that for us?
Right. So if the law does require a pre-trip inspection. So if you can prove that they haven't done their pre-trip inspection, you now have them as violating the federal law, sort of like we spoke about the Florida Power and Light case where they violated the law by not putting out the warning devices. Here, they violated the law by not doing the pre-trip inspection. And had they done it, they would have discovered X, Y, or Z. We don't know, but you can pretty much find that out in almost every single case. There's going to be a violation of the pre-trip inspection. So you really have to be looking for this. So what I would do is immediately when you get the case, send out those preservation letters immediately to make sure that one of the items you're getting is the pre-trip inspection report. You want to have that. Some of them are digital. Some people are still using old school, but paper. You still want to have that. It's important. Now, these things only have to be kept for 3 months. So I would want to get the last 3 months of pre-trip inspections. If you can get more, get more. If for some reason you get the case if you're an attorney, you get the case after the 3 months and the trucking company argues and says, well, we don't have it. I think that's a good argument to say, hey, wait a minute. The law required you to have it. You knew there was a crash that occurred here. Someone got injured and you destroyed this evidence and so you spoiled the evidence. So I would say I would move to, strike their entire defenses for spoiling evidence or destroying evidence that they shouldn't have destroyed had they followed the law. So, but more importantly, make sure you get out those preservation letters so you can get this type of evidence and be able to prove your case.
You mentioned earlier that most truck drivers don't do the pre-inspection, the pre-trip inspection, or at least that's your take or your experience with it. Given the chance for litigation like this, why it can't take that long to do this inspection? Why do you think they skip it? Is it just it's fine, that kind of a thing?
From our experience and in the cases that we've had, I don't want to say every truck driver doesn't do it, but the ones that we've had for some reason, and they're usually lead to really bad injuries, they're skipping the step. Either they're doing a half-fast job with their pre-trip inspection, or they're just not doing it at all. And I think it's because of the pressures from the trucking company to make deliveries by a certain time. It's all about, pushing these drivers to do more and more and more. And that becomes a problem for people like you and I who are, on the roadway, and, the general public becomes the victim in these types of cases when the laws are not followed, like a pre-trip inspection, when they could have recognized that the tires were bald and they didn't. And that leads to, some catastrophic injury, or the brakes were worn out. They just didn't recognize it because they didn't do their pre-trip, and they had to fulfill their hours to make sure they get their hours for the company so they can continue working. So those are some of the issues that we've seen over the years. Again, not every truck driver, but a lot of them do.
Do you find there's a difference between, because I know some truck drivers own their own trucks, other truck drivers, use company trucks. If a truck driver has their own, do you have any sort of sense if they're more prone to like making sure everything works, or less, like a little more arrogant about their own truck? Have you found any data that supports either way?
Yeah, I think the smaller companies don't have the systems in place like the bigger companies. The bigger companies do have the systems in place, but they don't follow through on the systems, right? You have the smaller companies who don't have the systems or don't have the know-how, because to get a license from the Department of Transportation to operate a vehicle, all you need is your CDL license, and then you get your DOT, your Department of Transportation number. Then they give you a motor carrier number, an MC number. It's not that hard to do. You fill out some applications and suddenly you got it. You sign this form, it's called an OP1, and says that you will swear that you will follow the rules and regulations, that is the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations. You'll follow them and make sure that you comply with them. There's a lot of times we take drivers depositions, they don't read English. They never had opened up the book. They don't know the first thing about the book. They have general ideas, but if you're really driving these trucks, you should study the law so you don't, and this isn't like you're going to law school. These are just rules you need to follow when you're driving 80,000 pound pieces of machinery that are very dangerous pieces of equipment that, cause people to lose their lives when they're not done properly. Whether it's a pre-trip inspection or putting out the warning devices or driving the truck properly, those are all things that can, change families' lives forever.
Is that one of the first things you do in a trucking accident case? Do you always say, hey, I want to see the inspection report?
Yeah. So the first thing we do is after signing up the client, we send that preservation letter out. I want to see the pre-trip inspection. I want to see those logbooks. I want to see the dash cam. I want to see the GPS. I want to see every single thing that's going on, the telematics, which tells you what's going on every time that they've, braked hard or swerved. I want to see everything. And that's why these cases are a little different than your average run-of-the-mill car accident case. There's so much more to do to prove our case, because people are skeptical when you have a case. Why are you bringing an injury case? Well, here's why. Here are all the violations that they did. This is why it's horrible that they were even on the road. And that's how we can prove our case. So yeah, that's one of the major things I like, is that pre-trip inspection report. It's kind of an eye opener to how this company follows the law, if they do at all.
Yeah, and I suppose like certain cases, like the example you gave with the tire flying at the guy at the food truck, that is I'm not saying guaranteed, but it sounds pretty likely that there was an issue that could have been avoided. And if they had done that, if they have done the pre-trip inspection.
Right. And we were able to prove in that case that there were multiple pre-trip inspections that said everything was perfect. Everything was perfect. And clearly they were just basically just filling it out, but they were just not even really doing the pre-trip inspection. It was just to say you did a pre-trip inspection, but had you really done it, you would have known that tire was loose. That tire was going to fly off. All you needed to do was just, put a little check with the palm of your hand, and you would have known that that tire is shaky and wobbly and you shouldn't have gotten on the road until you fix that. So lip service to pre-trip inspections, what that one was in that case. And that can lead to punitive damages, right? When you're just paying lip service to the rules and the laws that are in place. Again, they're meant there for a reason. That's why we have them, to prevent tragedies and incidents like that case.
What do you think can be done to at least raise the percentage of how many of these pre-trip inspections are done to try to ensure safety?
So the law, the law is passed. It's passed by Congress, right? That law is in place, and then it'll all start and trickle down from the company. Is the company putting the importance on the pre-trip inspection and then the other laws, right? Do they train their drivers on how important this is? Because the company's not with them when they're on the road. The company is supposed to train them. You can't just come in there and show a license. They do the background on the individual, and then they got to start training them. This isn't just go show up, drive a license, get a license, and drive a truck. Our company does it differently. If they're a safe company, we want to see these pre-trip inspections because it's the safe thing to do. It's the right thing to do. It's the reasonable thing to do. And if it all starts with the company and it trickles down and everyone does their job, things like a tire flying off, hitting someone who's by a food truck would never happen, right? Because they do their job. And so we'd like to see, in a perfect world, where these companies are really monitoring their employees, and the employees and drivers are really doing what they're supposed to do. So one, there would be less accidents, less people getting hurt. Hopefully no people getting hurt. I'd be out of a job, but that's okay. If no people are getting hurt, I can find a different line of business to do. We don't want people getting hurt. But unfortunately, that's not a perfect world. And people do skim off what they're supposed to be doing and just want to do it the fast way instead of the right way. Yeah. And unfortunately, bad things happen.
Yeah. That's for sure. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Road to Recovery, advocacy and insights for trucking accidents with Sagi Shaked. For more information or to connect with Sagi, visit shakedlaw.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and leave us a review if you get a chance. Sagi, it's always great to get your insight. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me again, Kevin.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.